welcome to another episode of Frame and Reference. I'm your host, Kenny McMillan, and today I'm talking with another non-DP in the form of David Bomba, who was the production designer on Ozark and was recently nominated for the Emmy for that category. David's awesome. He, like Lucinda Wright of last episode, phoned in from his office. He's currently on a shoot, so really appreciated him taking the time out of his busy day to speak with me. The man is full of joy. We have a great conversation about Ozark, about his other work, about production design in general, all the usual stuff you get from, how many production designers have I spoken to now? Three amazing ones, I believe. And no bad ones. If you know what, a guarantee when you come on this podcast is that you're guaranteed to be good. No, I've never had one dud. So, yay for us. Anyway, yeah, I think you're going to love this one. So go ahead and give it a listen. Here's my conversation with David Bomba. The way that we usually start the podcast is, simply by asking how you got started creatively. Were you always a creative like kid growing up? Or did you kind of get into it some other way? You know, a lot of DPs start as like weird stuff like architects or, environmental engineers, but architect might actually work for you.
Architecture is my background, but
there it is.
It started well before college. And when you said your first like design instinct, it's like I was always rearranging my room. Rearranging the room, as early as I can remember, and having my mom, Mom, come upstairs and check it out, and she'd come up, oh, you're so creative, and always really, really, really supportive of. She was supportive of everything we did, but. And then like Christmas time and Halloween, you decorate your house. And I decorated my room as well and put, stuff in the curtains. I almost burned the house. Well, twice I almost burned the house down. Once at Halloween with I wanted to see fire come out of the jack-o'-lantern mouth. So I took it upstairs the morning after, and it's like, don't play with fire. Well, took it in the bathroom and stuffed it with newspaper. And it's because it's in the shower. I mean, I can just put it out. And, woke the whole house up. It was a big to-do. And then another time at Christmas, we put like garlands up around the door, and that was always a big family project. And there was a competition in our neighborhood for Christmas decorations, or not a competition, but it was just kind of a thing to change their decorations. And some of the neighborhood actually, was like the garden club, but we weren't that. But anyway, the family, I had three sisters and mom and dad, and we made these banners together, and they were, like burlap banners that would hang on the front door, and we like angels and trumpets and, joy, 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 or something like that. And so right after Christmas is New Year's, right? And so around the door, this is making me think of my dad as well. But anyway, around the door, instead of like buying garland, which was too expensive, my dad like nailed styrofoam up and used the clippings from the bottom of the Christmas tree, and we made like garland around the front door.
It's kind of smart.
And the styrofoam was perfect for lighting sparklers, because you can use both hands to light the match. So you put the sparkler in there. Well, it was New Year's, and they were like crispy, and so the sparkler starts sparkling and like almost burn. The garland went up like how dried evergreen goes in a fire, and it's like the front door. Anyway, that was another grounding for weeks or months.
So it was either art department or pyro for you.
yeah, or special effects. But no, I like we were talking earlier, I studied architecture in Texas at Texas A&M, and really enjoyed the design aspect of it, but I didn't like the school aspect of it. And so I got an undergraduate degree and started working for a couple of months in Houston. Having worked there, during the summer breaks, and I actually took a semester off. I was designing a comedy. I was assistant to the designer of a comedy magic club, the dinner theater kind of thing. And it was supposed to take off. And here I am. I got a graduate degree, and the owners had kind of wanted me to like travel with them and franchise it. I was like, this is a great opportunity. I was young, and so it's like you're working in a club, and it was a lot of fun. But it didn't really take off. And after a couple of months, I realized this isn't going anywhere, and I need to get out of the restaurant business. So I moved to California to get into film, and that's how I got to do what I. Well, I mean, this didn't happen because that's
right.
Story, but that was kind of early design training.
Side note: have you ever been to the Magic Castle?
Yeah, it was very much like that. The guy the founder of the Magic Island based a club in Newport Beach. It was on Balboa Island called Magic Island. That was the prototype, and it was real big in the 80s. Very, very big. Same premise, private club, nice dinner, world-class magicians. I mean, in Houston, where the club, the second one was, I mean, I worked with Lance Burton before he ever went to Vegas and did it big. So it was interesting, but as I think about that, as I do, often I recollect kind of the interesting characters that kind of came through that place, but no, very much like the Magic Castle.
Yeah, I grew up as a magician, and so Lance Burton and all them are very in my head all the time, But I get to go to the Magic Castle now, kind of often. And it is fun to wander around and see the characters and.
Do you do sleight of hand or what?
Mostly cards.
Yeah.
Although I got small hands, so there are a lot of card manipulations I can't do. But cards, coins, sometimes. Some mentalism, but the thing is it's always a party trick, right? Like I'm not traveling around. It's always when you're hanging out with your friends and someone's like, "Oh, do something."
No, that was the most fascinating of all the talent to the club. The sleight of hand stuff was the wildest, and there were some amazing people that came through and that were regular. I mean, that were the staff. There were a couple on staff that lived there in Houston, and it was amazing.
It is a fun, I draw a lot of comparisons between magic and film because it's theater, but it's more personal like film can be because you're watching it yourself and what did Penn and Teller say? It's like lying, but you agree to be lied to,
yeah,
that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And
I love that.
I find that all fun.
I love that part of my job, kind of the illusion part and also kind of piecing it together. Most of the things I've been involved with are not, the popular sci-fi special effects movies. I've worked on that type of movie, but actually early on. And the tricks that you get to do and are allowed to do. I mean, we were working on something on this project. We're figuring out a shot where the camera moves through the wall, and how do we turn around and reveal that it didn't come through the wall, and those kind of things that you can incorporate into a shot that are an interesting way of storytelling, and it's not a reality because you're not in that house. You're on a soundstage in Atlanta, Georgia.
Right. It's because you this is actually something I was going to talk about a little later, but you're the art director on Apollo 13, right?
I was just going to start talking about that because that's the kind of that's the kind of visual and special effects that I like to be involved with, because that was in the early 90s or the mid 90s, and some of those sequences, the Waitlist sequences, were achieved in several different ways. I mean, we were at Universal Studios in an air-conditioned, like a freezer air-conditioned stage, so that smoke would come out of the actors' mouths, and on stage they were just like on a seesaw or a teeter-totter, so that it was perfectly balanced to them, and a grip or whomever would move the teeter-totter up and down so that they looked like they were floating, and it just sat under their seat. Then I was involved with the initial crew. We went there twice, but went to Houston and filmed in the KC-135, which is a weightless plane. It's an airplane where they've taken out all the seats. Sets were built that fit into the airplane, and we had actual weightless sequences
Interesting.
filmed during that. And then there was early CGI used. And when you look at the sequences of the rocket taking off, and you look at the sequences in
right.
Yeah, that part of that was a model. I mean, that was a model that was a digital domain, and it was literally laying on its side in their workshop, and the camera wasn't moving up and down. It was moving sideways across the model. And then they put in all the visual effects after that. But it was kind of early, it's still utilized this way, but so many things now are lean on complete generation or a lot of generation in the computer, and which is amazing. It's just I haven't been that involved with it. On this project, we're doing things like building extension and erasing things, or burning in screens or things like that. But no, Apollo 13 was an amazing experience in many different ways. But it was one of the I was very fortunate to get to work with some of the, as an art director and as a designer, some amazing directors and people like Ron Howard and John Schlesinger, and to be able to share a room with them has been quite exciting.
Yeah, I mean,
and
Ron
cinematographers too. That's the thing that I mean, the relationship I'm developing now with Toby is amazing, and it reflects back to 10 years ago, I got to work on a film with Denzel Washington, which there was a lot of pressure just in doing that, because he's a big guy in every aspect of the word. And, I'm always, as an artist, I'm always questioning myself and wondering when they're going to figure out, maybe it's like, oh, this is like the Emperor with the Emperor. Anyway, let's not go down that road. But I was going to be working with Philippe Rousselot, and I was like, wow, this guy is like big time. And I had, as an art director, I had got to work with Conrad Hall and some amazing cinematographers who were all just so lovely. But when the name and the reputation come, I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to balance myself in this arena? And he was just amazing and so gracious. And I have found in my experience that I don't know, it just varies. I can't even say what I was going to say, because it varies, because just more recently a younger but just as accomplished cinematographer, Jeff Cronenweth. I got to work with him on a tiny little movie with Sam Taylor Johnson that Sam and Aaron, wrote and produced. And there you go. It's like I'm working on it, going into it, like, let's say it was I think it was less than $4 million, maybe a $3 million movie. And I'm working with Jeff Cronenweth, and it's like, I know he's going to get his toys, but I don't know what I'm going to have to work with, and how am I going to present myself to these people,
Right.
And what are the tools that I will have? And it was one of, the Philippe and Denzel, and I include like Sharon Davis, the costume designer. That aspect of on-set production and creative was one of the most amazing experiences I've had. And the same with Sam and Jeff and Aaron being an actor and producer. It's like, I think I might have taken off on a plane that you didn't ask, but
no, that's fine.
But the sometimes the fear that I bring to the initial part of a project is so is misplaced with wondering about people and their reputation and who they are and what they are. And I think, just kind of And Kenny, maybe this has turned into a little bit of a therapy session.
To be fair, I've pulled that on a few guests, honestly.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny, actually, the 50th episode of this podcast, I interviewed Jeff. And he was incredibly gracious and very nice and gave me a lot of time.
I want to work
awesome.
So badly. It's like so many, I mean, a lot of times you go into a dialogue on a project and it's like, oh, those walls are too white, or, oh, I'm not sure about the reflection on that. And let's take the glass out of that photograph or whatever it is. And there was nothing that he didn't. And then it's funny with Philippe, I before he landed, I'm just thinking of conversations. There was nothing that Jeff ever changed. He called me up one night. They were doing an all-nighter in art department. Once the set's open, it's like, I'm not, good luck, and I'll see you in the morning, or I'll see you at the next call time. But Jeff called me up and asked me if he could move a lamp off of the desk. And I said, you can do whatever you want with that room. I know it's going to be amazing. And there was a similar thing like with Philippe when we were working, a lot of, and I'm on a project where it's a mixed race cast. And so the values and the tones of things you need to be sometimes a little bit more aware of for the balance in a scene if you have multiple skin tones. And I asked Philippe about that on the phone before he came, because we were making decisions and picking things before he came. And I was asking about lights and lamps and color. And he says, you do what you feel is correct and correct to the period, and I'll dance behind you. And it's exactly what he did. It's exactly what he did. He's the same person that we had a company move from a location into a field that we were shooting at dusk, magic hour. So the clock is ticking. And the bus was supposed to be traveling down the road at magic hour, and there were supposed to be campfires in front of these tents. And the rigging department was a little bit behind. The company moved earlier than expected, and they were setting up the shots, and Philippe landed and I landed, and they needed help. And so the two of us were like digging holes in the field, planting the lights that were going to simulate the campfires. That's one I'm going to keep in my memory banks forever.
Your comment about different skin tones and stuff kind of set me back to like, when you're a starting off filmmaker, you have to work with like the apartment that you have or whatever. And, all apartments, the office you're in, they're all white walled. Mm-hmm. And we don't obviously tend to shoot that in filmmaking. And I'm wondering, with your experience as an architect, why do we build spaces for ourselves that don't reflect what we want to see in our art?
Why do like our personal spaces?
Yeah, the spaces we spend far more time in than film. We neutralize.
Personally, I'm living in a rental in Atlanta. Before I moved in, I hired my paint department to go in and paint the entire house, because it was a magazine article I read. My big my go-to color, I'll show it to you.
Yes, please.
For anything is Pharaoh and Ball. Pigeon is the name of the color. And there was an article in the New York Times about a guy outside of Woodstock or someplace near Woodstock that painted his entire house top to bottom in pigeon. And I saw the pictures and I picked this color. This is really bad that I'm not immediately going to it, because it's always my first go-to. Is that it? Sorry, I had to put my glasses on.
Fair enough.
Where are you?
Los Angeles.
Where in Los Angeles?
This is West LA, so kind of outside of Santa Monica, in that like Japanese area.
There's pigeon.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
It's like a greenish kind of gray kind of.
It's a greenish gray, and depending on the time of day or the color of light, it really takes on a gray field. It can pull out a lot of blue as well, but it's really, I mean, it is everybody looks great in that. So anyway,
Well,
So you were asking, why do we not? I mean, my personal space, I mean, it's bad. Um, um,
but it's like the spaces that we see in film and the things that you guys design are always so, we always look at those and goes like, that's amazing. But then we move into our own houses and it's just white, you know, whatever. And it's not like you guys are inventing, you know, I've worked with production designers who will straight up go to Home Depot, grab a bunch of stuff and then, you know, return it 2 days later or whatever. So it's not like these things are unachievable or you can't find them. It's just we choose not to. And I'm wondering about the psychology of that from like a designer / architect perspective. Is it an economy thing or why do we do that?
I've always kind of made a space my own. I mean, where I set this thing up in what the department calls the sauce palace or something like that, because people get saucy or something in here. But this is where all the samples and things are. But in like what we call the war room, where we're putting up all of the imagery and the conceptual ideas, we came in beforehand and it's like, hey, you guys, let's paint these walls so that it's the color that we're gonna. I do that in my personal life and in my workspaces and personal spaces. I set it up. And it kind of is interesting because it's like our eyes are always open and kind of taking in information and looking at things. And sometimes I go into personal spaces and people, like you're saying, people don't do that. You know, some people are very, very aware and, you know, sometimes they might hire somebody to make their personal space amazing. And then some people, you know, you know, it's not their thing, but it's definitely mine.
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. This is my office now, and because I edit so much in here, I'm like, do I just paint all the walls like neutral gray? And I was like, that's gonna be so boring if like, but it makes sense as like a colorist. Like you don't want blue, you know, that'll screw up your whole.
Yeah.
I actually did want to ask, you know, especially working with people like Conrad Hall or Jeff, are there any things that the cinematographers you've worked with have taught you? That you maybe weren't aware of needing to think about, or something interesting like that you've taken with you from John to John?
I don't know which ones have kind of formed it, but I'd say in like the last 5 years, my emphasis has been more on the light of a set, and it's always been an element. But it's like, for instance, I mean, I on Ozark, you return to similar locations, or you go to different locations, and it's like, yeah, the decor can be different, the value, the color can be different, but then when you really get into a scene, and as I'm looking at you and as we're talking, a lot of times scenes get into a face. It's like, what am I seeing right now? I'm seeing a really beautiful light of the window behind you, and then the beautiful reflection in the artwork, the glass of the artwork.
These are actually uncut card sheets, like playing card. Hold on, I'll show you, since you'll find that interesting.
I know what you're saying. I love that.
Yeah, I've had these. This is a gaff deck. So these are all like fake cards that are used for tricks, and this is just a black and white one.
What's the image on the board in the corner?
That one?
Knows all. Is that the mentalist guy? Knows all?
No, that's Lewis Black. He signed that for me years ago. The comedian. Okay. We got some snowboards back there.
Nice.
That's in focus. And then those are some film strips from The Matrix. But nice. It would just do show and tell. This is the problem. My girlfriend gets mad because like we'll have new people over and I'll be like, and these are art I bought from the guy down the street, and this is my new snowboard, and this, you know, she gets mad at show and tell.
I love that.
But yeah, so you were talking about light, incorporating more light into sets.
And what the pattern of the light is going to be, and like in the pre-production, the show that I'm on, we're going to start shooting next week, and in pre-production, those were conversations that were had with the cinematographer and the director, and it's like, particularly when I have conversations with the cinematographer. It's like, I want to understand his sense of composition and how that light, is it going to be soft? Is it going to be hard? Is it going to be harsh? And I start to utilize that in the development of a character in the scenes. And that's just played. And that comes from, it's like, it's a way for me, like a window puncture or the pattern of a window. It's a way for me to be able to control a little bit of that pattern, because I can't always determine what you guys are going to come in and do with your light. So is it going to, this white room, if your house or where you are right now was a set, this could turn from anything from like almost like it could be completely blown out where you don't see much of anything, or the lights could be off.
Right.
So if there's a natural source, like a window or something like that I can, at least look at the pattern and kind of, but those are the conversations that I love to have, and sometimes you have that ability to collaborate. And that was the experience that I really had, like, say, for instance, with Denzel and Philippe, and the same with Sam and Jeff. And all of this, I really enjoyed the cinematographers that I got to work with on Ozark as well. That's kind of my most recent, long haul relationship.
I actually interviewed Eric Koretz. That was like 2 episodes ago.
Yeah.
Well, not for whoever's listening, but for for us today now. He was like 2 episodes ago, and he was fantastic. But that show has a very interesting, like, I remember I watched a couple episodes of the most recent season to talk to him about it, and like the family's like house. I remember they were having a conversation, and it looked like it was only lit from like a patio door. There no lights were on, or at least it felt that way. Yeah. Was that kind of the goal? Because then later in the office, when it's nighttime, there's obviously lights. But I think you might know what episode I'm talking about. She's that one that was a little. But that show has a very interesting low key look to it across the board. Were you, because some movies, some television shows will be like, you can't tell when it's edited together, but if you were to take a wide shot of the room, there's like 40 lamps. This child has 40 lamps in their room.
Yeah. That's not the case. That wasn't the case on Ozark. There was specific lighting and big lighting setups, but I've never been on a show that had more concentration on shade and creating shade, particularly in exteriors. When I came on to Ozark in the 3rd season, so I only did the 3rd and the 4th season, and I was apprehensive about that, because it was like, oh, why do I want to pick up where somebody else left off? Artist ego, whatever.
Sure.
And I interviewed and I wanted to work with Jason Bateman, and he was the director of the first 2 episodes, executive producer, one of the strong creative forces, and I wanted to work with him. And I said, my apprehension is like, I can pick up where somebody left off, but it's like, what's the creative feedback, or what's the creative gift? And he assured me that there were things in the upcoming season. There was going to be, I was going to get to design the riverboat and open up the whole aspect of Mexico and the drug cartels world. And that was amazing and exciting to do. And he wanted to veer away from the gray, blue, green, shadowed, palette and feel. And just to open it up a bit. And I believe also in the 3rd season, and I'm not certain, I'm not the technical guy as far, I think it was an ARRI camera or an ARRI camera, that they switched camera types, I know, on the 3rd season. I don't know if that carried into the 4th season.
I think Eric said they switched to Venice.
Maybe on the 4th season.
On the 4th.
Yeah, I'm not certain. There was something red. There was a red.
I think red. I had to look this up. I think red was 1 and 2, and then they either switched to Venice, or maybe it did go ARRI and then Venice.
But the look kind of took the show look kind of took a different turn on season 3, and in some ways, and not to slight anyone on season 1 or 2, but I think the intent was for it to be there to be a little bit more crispness in the darkness. And I think the new camera and the new technology allowed us to do that. And I got to introduce some new colors and some new textures. And then in season 4 got to kind of, introduce some new elements by going to Chicago and introducing, that was a fun set to design. The Claire Shaw, the head of the pharmaceutical family. That was a fun project to do. But now I'm sorry. Now I'm forgetting.
No, that's fine. There's this great little borderline pamphlet that I read called In Defense of Shadows by a Japanese gentleman. And I think it's from like the 40s or something. And he talks about sort of the competing ideas between Japanese and Western architecture, and like there's one chapter about bathrooms. He's like, why are you guys making bathrooms white? That's just trying to clean. It's not a clean area. You want it to be dark and you want to think in there. So that's what we do. We do wood and, very darkness and stuff. And it's a great book to read about, as you're saying, like shadow can be beautiful. That's
really interesting because it's like I'm thinking about like bathrooms, because it's like the bathrooms where you kind of like a not like a more public bathroom, like in a restaurant or something like that. When you go into a dark bathroom, there is a sense of kind of like,
you get to chill.
I'm thinking about it. It's like instead of walking into like the airport bathroom that's all bright, but maybe that's part of the psychology to in and out or something like that. But I don't know.
It's funny. It's such a small book in the bathroom. I'm such a boy. It's just the bathroom part stuck with me. But it is like I recommend cinematographers read that thing, and probably designers too. It's mostly a design book. It's not a photographic book. But when having to deal with, because I know in art direction, like texture is so important. Suits. I guess that's costuming. But in any case, like texture is cameras love texture, but you need light to ping off texture. So with a show like Ozark that's very shadowy and stuff, how are you drawing out texture? Do you just find small fixtures to kind of rake, or is it not a very textural show?
It definitely is, and sometimes you have to like exaggerate the texture. Knowing that the lighting is going to be dark. We're on something that we're working on right now. The project I'm working on now, we're in a conference room, and the cinematographer wants it really just to be a key light right over the desk and for the walls to fall down. And I want that as well. But I also don't want it just to go black. And so there's a wash around that comes from the ceiling wall connection that's going to wash down. And it's been kind of not a trial and error process, but there's been at least 2 iterations of it, figuring out the texture that's going to be on the wall, a paper or something that's going to actually catch the light and then let it fade off, so that it just doesn't go. We're always thinking about texture and reflection, and whether the paint's going to be flat or is it going to be semi, or is like we're working with Venetian plaster, and how much of it is going to be polished and how much of it isn't going to be polished, and always playing with that. And it used to be the feeling, that, it's television. I used to have a different approach or mental. I just had a different thought about detail because I came from film. I came from film world and hadn't done much work that was intended for television. I had seen my work on television, but sure. You paid a little bit different attention when you knew that it was going to be projected, 50 feet wide. Well, people now have home theaters. A lot of people have, there's a 7-foot television that anybody can have in their living room. And so it's projected wide. And so Ozark was everything we did, we treated as a film. And so texture and light and darkness, was all of those things were very much part of the equation.
Yeah. Something that Grant Major mentioned that really stuck with me because it's so obvious, but sort of the importance of it left me because I don't, before I talk to him, because I don't think about it that much. And that is how important production design is to telling the story of a character. I think costume is the first thing people might think of or what they say, the script, but the space they live in. If you're an independent filmmaker, a student or something, like I said earlier, like you're going to use your apartment, and it's so easy to check out of a movie and you don't even realize you're doing it when the space they live in isn't clearly that character's space.
Yeah. The project that I'm on is all about it's a cast of characters, and it's an ensemble piece, and so there's more than half a dozen character sets, whether it's their workplace and or their homes, and in a short period of time trying to develop, you read the script, you talk with, the director helps you. This director, I'm working with Regina King right now, and she, oh, wow. I love working with theater people that have a theater background, and absolutely. I mean, an actress or an actor. It's like she's always thinking about the character and what is that actor going to do, and what is going to be, what do we present for them. And at the end of the day, that is really, and it's not at the end of the day, it's really what I'm here for, is to create that space for them and who that character is. And I've gone to the mat to do that. I remember a specific situation. I was going to get to work with Cherry Jones, and I had just seen her on Broadway. I think she won an Oscar for The Heiress, and I was so excited. I think it was on a movie called Divine Secrets of the Yaya Sisterhood, and Callie Curry wrote, and first time directing, an amazing experience. And so the Cherry Jones character, I'll think of the name when I'm not trying to think of it. But anyway, there was a beat of a scene. It was literally a beat and come back. And it was a scene where the girls are coming, Buggy was her name. And maybe. Anyway,
go with it.
The girls are coming up after kind of a coming out party where Buggy made a big. It wasn't Buggy. Anyway, she made a big deal and got home, and so the girls are coming up, and it's literally a glance from a daughter to her mother, and the Cherry Jones character was going to be kneeling on a prie-dieu, praying the rosary, and it was literally just the door cracked, seeing her on the rosary, kneeling and saying the rosary with her bed in the background. And the room originally had like shag carpet on the ground, and it was like there was bad wallpaper, and I was going to redo it. And I was told we don't have the money. It's like we don't, we can't spend that kind of money on that room. And so it's like I took the numbers out of the budget, but I absorbed it in another set. And so when production came through on the Tech Scout, and the production manager saw it, and she was like, "Bomba, I told you not to, spend it. It's like, it's okay. It's like, it's covered. But I told you not to work, to put money into that." And I said, it's necessary. I promise you it's necessary. So day comes of shooting, and I introduced myself to Cherry Jones, and I said, "I want to show you something." It's like, I know this is, you're only in for a couple of days, but this was really important to me. And I took her up to her room, and I said, and I didn't give her the details, but I said, it was a little bit of a battle, but this room is for you. I kind of redid this room for you. And she didn't go back to her trailer. She stayed. Oh, wow. And I mean, she spent the day in her room when she was breaking, instead of going back to her trailer and staying there. And so that was kind of that was something that I hold close to, because I want to make the space for the actors to do what they do best, and to create the space where they feel comfortable, and they are amazing. They have amazing talents, and they can do things up against a flat or a corner of a set and not have to have the other two walls where the camera and the studio and everything is. But I try wherever I can, and to give that character something to work with, and especially if it's a personal space.
Yeah. Well, and in some ways you're taking on the actors. You have to think like the actor. Is there a way, can you walk me through kind of your thought process when designing a room for a character? Like, obviously you're reading the script and trying to intuit, but how do you make like little choices about like, oh, this is their little jewelry box and the jewelry that's in it, like anything like that? Like how do you make those choices?
Well, it starts like with reading the script and kind of trying to understand, like in the current project, there's a guy that's down, kind of not rock. I don't want to say rock bottom, but he's divorced. There's besides his ex-wife, there's a woman that is wanting child support, and he's living in a month-to-month apartment. So he moves into this month-to-month apartment and goes and gets a couple of side tables and a kitchen table from IKEA, and a bed. The beds just calls up mattresses to go, and they deliver a bed. And so you kind of create this space for him where he is. The space itself, it's like, where is that place? And it was scripted as such and such apartments next to the freeway. And so in the morning when I go to the gym, I go by this freeway and Amtrak station, and there's this great apartment. And it's the first location that I found, because it was like, read the script, I'm on the job. It's like that morning, it's like I see, it's like, this is it. It looks out over the central connector of Atlanta, which we're telling a story. I'm working in Atlanta, which is like a huge film base right now, but most of the time you're turning Atlanta into something else. Right. But this is Atlanta for Atlanta, so I'm looking for locations.
What a gift.
that kind of expose and represent Atlanta. And this one part of the freeway where the two freeways north of town merge together and then split up as they go out of downtown is always a cluster. And to find this place right there, it's prominent, it's iconic. You can see Midtown, you can see downtown. And so it was just, it's like, how do you create that character? I'm putting him in a shithole apartment, right, and in a pretty miserable location. And I don't have much else, to offer him, and the costume designer fills in. It's like his suit doesn't fit correctly. He's lost X amount of pounds, and that's a relationship too that I really, really, really treasure, is the costume designer sure, DP relationship. I mentioned it with Sharon Davis on The Great Debaters, working with Denzel, but I've had that kind of rapport and relationship. I'm not going to say her name, pronounced Kaspernick, I think is her last name, but Megan Kaspernick is our costume designer on this right now, working with she and Toby, with Regina at the helm, and Regina set the table for it. When I came on, I was the first one on, and I had questions for her, and it's like, what do you feel about this? What do you feel about that? And she said, I need to get you and Toby and Megan in a room together or on a Zoom together and talk about that. And that was incredible and Denzel did the same thing. When you have that kind of leadership, it sets a nice table.
When you're designing a space like that, a lot of times you have to exaggerate things for camera. Do you have to do that with production design? And also, is less more? Because I'm just thinking of any film, sometimes there's a lot of stuff, it's busy. Maybe that speaks to the character's like frenetic mind or something. But do you find that you have to exaggerate things in a room, or is subtlety still work in the same way that would work?
It varies. It varies on the character. Is the character large and loud, or is he humble and humiliated? And that's kind of what I'm dealing with now. It's like the one character is kind of like I don't want to say down on his luck, but life isn't treating him very well right now. And he's trying to climb back up. And this other character is this big, huge public figure, you know, mega millionaire guy that's big and large. And that doesn't last in this story. And so initially there were thoughts of like, oh, fragmented glass or broken glass or glass houses or glass buildings, and you know, where does he live? And it was interesting in this because there are 3 residences that he has, 3 personal spaces that are represented in this: an old family home, his ex-wife's home that he built with her, and then his new home. And so, you know, the architecture has there are similarities. Maybe those similarities might only be thematic, like an equestrian theme might carry through, or a color tone might carry through. So yeah, it can be subtle, but then it can be strong.
Are you speaking to actors about? Are actors giving input on, you know, what they think their characters are doing that you follow, or is it mostly script and director?
A lot of it, the actors don't come into play a lot of times until, you know, the ship has sailed. But I always, when involved with a personal space or a character, and if the actor is available, certainly. I mean, we had a camera test the other day, and I had worked with this actor before, and I went up and introduced myself, and there's a scene that we're designing something specifically for him physically, and wanting him to kind of do a test with that or see what I asked him, it's like, would you like to come try it out? And just in explaining it, he goes, I'm certain that that's going to be fine, what you do. Now, other actors would go, I want this. I want to take this handle home with me, or I want to go, you know, every one of us, you know, has a different method and a different way to get to where we're going. But a lot of times I will certainly engage the actor. And like with this project, the ex-wife, I showed her kind of tone and texture, and gave her just introduced. I had worked with her as well years and years ago, and reintroduced myself and told her some things that I was doing. Others don't, you know, it's like some, you know, it sometimes you do, sometimes you don't.
Yeah. You know, it occurs to me that, you know, cinematographers I've got what, 100 some odd American cinematographer magazines here, and Cinefx, but that's not really related. You know, there's a lot of resources for DPs. For people who are trying to get into art direction or production design, like, what are some great resources that can kind of put them on the right path and make sure that they're making good choices?
Wow, that's a hard one. I mean, I just, you know, I can only kind of maybe reflect on like my own path, as far as like I was always interested in design and studied architecture, and so I got a sense of space. But it wasn't real. And that's another interesting thing too, because it's like, so in school, I think for designers, production designers, the sense of scale and space is the most important thing to wrap your head around. You talked about, you know, building sets bigger than, a lot of times there's some people build a set 10% or 15% bigger so the camera can move around in it. And I don't normally like to do something like that. I like to make it real, and if we're on stage, make it, you know, able to come apart if need be.
Right.
But I think my background, the study of architecture and architectural history and space and is what I fall back on. And it wasn't until I actually went to Europe. I traveled all over the United States, you know, as a kid, not all over, but pretty much all over as a kid. But then my job has taken me different places. But when I went to Europe, finally, I didn't go until after college, and I saw the places that I studied through pictures. in school and in architectural history classes and things like that. And the scale clicked at that point, when it was like when you go into the cathedral at Ely and you see the height of that cathedral, you can't determine that from the picture in,
yeah, no one's taking forensic photography.
Architecture through the ages, volume 1 and volume 2. It doesn't, for me, it's like it doesn't work. And even in present day, when the location manager and I are going through photographs on a television screen or on an iPad, it's like, yeah, I like that, but I have to see it in person to understand what the scale is. But once I get there, once I draw that out, or actually I'm not drawing much these days, the set designer and art directors and people draw things out and we model them now as well. They model them as well. I'm not up on all the current technology. I still hand draft but anyway, you get to see a lot of the visual and the scale beforehand. So the scale of things is really crucial, in my opinion, for what.
Was there this is kind of too quick. So for some reason, the Batman cartoon, remember the old Batman cartoon from the 90s?
Yeah.
That art deco, was that art deco, that styling? Or is that
there was yeah.
That for some reason that stayed with me, and that became my favorite architectural style, is that old art deco look. Was there something when you were in college that like a style of architecture that really got you going?
Antonio Gaudi. And it's the furthest thing. Maybe it isn't the furthest thing how I live when I get into a cluttered mode, but I like Antonio Gaudi because his architecture is as like a mosaic. Everything, the elements, the shapes, and everything are like a mosaic, and I was drawn to that. And I also always liked Luis Barragan. You were talking earlier about I forget what the name of was it the Japanese book? You said something about shadows.
In Defense of Shadows.
In Defense of Shadows. Luis Barragan is I think he's still with us, Mexican architect that uses bold color. And sometimes that's the thing that your eye is drawn to, but the shape and he'll put a wall up at one of my favorite things that he's done is, because I'm a horse person as well, but he designed a horse farm, a horse ranch in Mexico, and there is a water trough that's this really long extended water trough where I think the water kind of might even peel off the sides, but at the end of it, and it's in a forest, it's not a forest, but there's trees around it. At the end of it, there's just a wall there to capture the shadow of the tree as the sun shines through it, and it is such a moment. And that's I say that word moment. That's kind of the thing that I kind of strive to do in work. It's like I don't the reason I liked film was I was going to be able to get into the aspect of storytelling and visual storytelling, and I think of things that are kind of like cinematic memories that are kind of seared in my head. That's what I have hoped to create, for people in a film that, I don't think I hit that moment or make that moment in every project, but I that's kind of and I love what I do. I love, the aspect of getting to design stories and to be part of like the storytelling, but I also hope that I kind of can create a visual that sears into somebody's memory.
Well, and I actually asked, this was going to be a two-part question. I asked them in reverse. First, I was going to ask, were there any films, because I was mentioning Batman, were there any films that stuck with you as when you were coming up that really, from the production design perspective, got you going?
The film where everything, and this is kind of going to be so maybe, I don't want to say pedestrian, but so kind of like, it's not maybe necessarily like a classic where you think it would be like, but when I saw the movie Tootsie, and there's a scene, where the Tootsie character is coming over to babysit for Jessica Lange's child, and they're in the entryway, and it's kind of a muted kind of 80s taupey mauve rose with some blue color in it. And it's like Jessica Lange's clothes worked with that. And Tootsie's clothes worked with that. Dustin Hoffman's clothes worked with that. And it was like, somebody figured that out. That didn't just happen. You know, somebody figured that out. And it's like, who figures that out? And that's where kind of the dig began. And this was in the mid 80s. And, you know, at the time it wasn't internet world. And so when I moved to California, I like hit the library to find out, you know, who designed that, who might live in Los Angeles, who can I call? And I had one name, that a friend in Houston at the club who I'd hired as a cashier said, oh, you're moving to California, you need to call George Jenkins. He's basically my godfather. It's like, who's George? He was a production designer. He designed all the President's Men. And so I had gone to this, you know, cut to 8 months later, I'm in California. I'm eating rice and beans and living in a warehouse in Huntington Beach, and trying to figure out, how am I going to stay here? Because and so I'm going to the library, trying to figure out people to call, getting the Hollywood Reporter and Variety, and looking at the production listings. And I finally called George and I introduced myself, and he was like 77 at the time, and he was teaching a class at UCLA, and I told him who I was and my connection, and they invited me over. George and his wife's name was Phyllis, invited me to their house, and he offered if I wanted to audit the class that he was teaching at UCLA. And so I got to audit his class, and that was opened so many, not necessarily employment opportunity doors, but it just opened so many mental doors for me. And that was where, you know, that was kind of my, you know, that was the, yeah, George, that was, yeah. And now again, it's like I'm forgetting what the question is. I keep like taking off on an airplane, and I don't know.
No, that's.
I'm sorry.
I don't really have questions on this podcast. I have prompts.
Okay. I feel there's a lot of air traffic. Air traffic control is busy in my brain right now.
No, dude, do not worry about it. That's sometimes those are the best. I remember I've said this before, but one of my favorite interviews was with his name's Stephen Gaynor. He's a DP. He's the curator at the ASC Museum. Uh-huh. So I asked him my first question. Is that one good? My second question came at the hour 30 mark. So, wow. You know, so as much as it's something for people to listen to, you know, I'm also listening. So for me, it's like, you know, I'm buckled in. I don't want to keep asking questions. I just want to listen. You know, we're kind of coming up on time, which sucks. But I did, you know, obviously you're nominated for an Emmy for Ozark. What is this your first? This can't be your first nomination.
We were nominated last season as well. And that was my first Emmy nomination. The Art Directors Guild has nominated, and I've gotten a couple of Art Directors Guild awards, but this is the Emmy is exciting. They're all excited. You know, to get recognized or to get nominated is exciting, and it makes you feel good. And
100%.
Then it gets y'all. You know, it gets me all anxious, like, oh, you know, it really doesn't matter, but it'd be really nice to win. But it's like, it's a nice. I feel very blessed. I have a lot of the people that I'm working with right now worked with me on Ozark. My art director, Sean Jennings, was with me on that, and we've worked together before. But it's like it's a lot. I have a lot of amazing people that I get to work with on these projects. And I this morning. Friday morning, I knew we were having a big production meeting, which was not anything I really wanted to do. And so I got to the office, I didn't pull in hot, but I was kind of wound up, and walked the stages, and I saw some things that weren't finished. I made I had some reactions to unfinished work, and kind of took a different tone for the day. And then I kind of had the meeting, and I kind of had a little bit of not a full meditation, but I had a little bit of a regroup. And I just had and what I do, it's a gratitude thing. I needed to do a gratitude check.
Sure.
And I realized that I have a lot of people helping me, and a lot of people are doing the best that they can and are going to make me shine. And so I had to backstroke a little bit and make a little bit of, I'm sorry, and I really didn't mean to be an ass this morning. I'm just fearful of, we start shooting next week. I'm fearful of the time. I'm fearful of what we're going to be able to do. And so I reacted like a toddler, and I apologize. But the nomination is I'm very excited and grateful for that. But I'm most grateful for the people that I get to work with and that lift me up and that put up with me sometimes.
We've all said that every film production is a collection of egos, whether or not they have it handled or not. It's always a team effort. I don't have any, what was I trying to, no single ships in the sea. That's not a thing. I mean,
but when you talk about that though too, it's like it is a bunch of egos, and it's a bunch of different personalities, and everybody, I'm lucky because I get to kind of have my own department and get to pick, who do I get to work with specifically in my world, and who's my buffer and who's my support. And then there are people that you're not going to want to necessarily go out to dinner with or hang out with much. But Michael Kornblith, who was the designer on Apollo 13, he used to say, working on a project is kind of like you're in a lifeboat, and it's like you're going to get to this island, and you're going to get off, and then there's going to be a rescue, and some of these people you're going to stick with and you're going to go off with again, but you're not going to have to be with everybody all the time, and you can't be with those same people all the time. And so I love what I do. I love the people that I've gotten to meet. And even though sometimes there's challenges in that kind of ego personality world, for the most part, I've gotten to work with a lot of amazing people.
Well, to your point, pretty much every DP I've interviewed has said that while technical knowledge is great, lighting knowledge is great, at the end of the day, you're a manager.
Mm-hmm.
So that's something I kind of try to hammer home a little bit in this podcast for those who are listening for educational reasons, because the audience, I think, is like half people wanting to learn, half people just like in war stories and shit. But if you're going to work in this industry in any capacity, especially if you're a department head, but even in the middle of your little hierarchy, you need to know how to deal with folks.
No, it's you mentioned like if people listening are comers up and advice and things like that. You talk about like the doors that open, like the George, like for me, George was an open door, but you also have to kind of look for those opportunities and look for the people and make those relationships, because so much of it is networking as well. I mean, in the early days, it was like somebody would call, hey, are you free? Can you come work on the swing gang, for 3 days next week? And then that person, got you on a job that did this. And then I poked my head into the art department and said, hey, do you need a drafts person? I can draw, or I can sketch for you. And then that person says, yes. Michael Kornblith looked at my drawings and goes, oh yeah, you'll be great for this. And he was an architect. He was a couple of years older than I was, but he went to my rival school in Texas. He went to Texas and I went to Texas A&M, and we both studied architecture. So you just have to look for those cracked doors that are open and ask questions and look for the opportunities. And I think kind of back to the personality ego of it all is look for the people that are willing to shepherd you as well.
Yeah. Or at least know how to manage their own ego.
Yeah. Well, I'm
everyone's a work in progress.
I have good days. I have my good days and I have my bad days. I try to have more good than bad. And if I don't if I do have a bad day, I try to do a little back pedaling.
Yeah. Well, so normally I ask the same two questions of everyone, but I'll ask the first one and then because it's the only one that checks out or that works. But is there a piece of advice or something you've read or maybe some guidance that you received that has stuck with you over the past maybe couple years or something like that you think other people working in the industry or other production designers might benefit from?
I think that the most important one right now, and I have to look at it on my phone because it came from my godson's sister, Sammy, who I'm really close with. She's a junior at, she's finishing her sophomore year at Lewis and Clark. And I want to make sure that I get it right because it's perfect. It's where my brain is a lot of times because I don't know about other artists or other people in this business, but this is perfect. Comparison is the thief of joy.
Yes. Yeah. No, especially nowadays when it's so easy to compare yourself to others.
Yep.
It's practically a business.
All of those young people on Instagram.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and also like
and that kind of rolls into the whole Emmy and nominations and awards. I'm just grateful to be in a group of 4, 5, 6 other nominees and their teams that were recognized for, hey, you did a good job. You did a good job.
What's funny is, so a friend of mine, well, 2 points on that. One, a friend of mine, it just got nominated for his documentary, guy I went to college with. And so we threw a little, we got together, had a few drinks, the nomination, and we were talking about it. And this guy is, if you could literally say hey, you're about to get first place, and he'll go, eh. He doesn't get excited about anything. And I saw as we were leaving, we were in our cups a little bit. And as we were leaving, we started making jokes about whether or not if he won, where he would put the statue. And I just watched him get a little just a little in his shoulders a little bit. And I was
Nice.
But I think getting nominated is the win. And if you win, that's the party, whatever. That's extra cake. Yeah. But the other thing I wanted to say was, I've said multiple times on this podcast that cinematographers often get credit for the DP's job. The cinematography was beautiful. And what they really mean was that the set design and the costumes were beautiful and they liked the look of it. But they only know to say that it was the cinematographer because that's the only person they know makes the look.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you for getting the recognition you deserve. Because the show looks beautiful from a cinematography perspective as well. But yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much, Kenny. I appreciate that.
Yeah. I'll let you get back to work. For anyone watching, he's in his office right now. And thank you so much for spending the time with me, man. That was a fantastic conversation. That was really lovely.
Take care. Thank you.
Frame and Reference is an Owlbot production. It's produced and edited by me, Kenny McMillan, and distributed by ProVideo Coalition. Our theme song is written and performed by Mark Pelly, and the F&R Mattbox logo was designed by Nate Truax of Truax Branding Company. You can read or watch the podcast you've just heard by going to provideocoalition.com or youtube.com/owlbot, respectively. And as always, thanks for listening.